Hey guys, welcome back to the CLC podcast. Great to have you back with us as we're continuing on in the Around the Table Dinner with Jesus series. And today I'm joined with Pastor Clint. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, man. Long-time listener, first-time caller. It's awesome. It's pretty flattering to be here around the table with you.
That's right. Our table has gotten a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
And our location a little different than the first couple.
I noticed a little bit of a downgrade from the first couple ones.
I wouldn't say downgrade. I'd say a difference, maybe.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, the week that you're joining us, they said, let's go back to the studio.
To the bunker.
Yeah.
We're going to throw them in the closet.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. But here we are, and we previously had an awesome family host us over there. They had a beautiful table and pretty awesome little view. We get this, but luckily we have this, which is still impactful regardless of our table.
That's right.
So we have a table, so we're good. And so we can have this conversation. But I know you'll be speaking this week, and we're going to be in Luke 9. And tell me why you're excited about this one.
So the first couple of messages in the series, leaning into, like, the focus was on the table, right? Round the table, dinner with Jesus. As we work through this Lenten season and get ready for Easter and all that God has in store, really working through the book of Luke. As we mentioned in other podcasts and the messages, that Luke is the one who really captures those meals, puts the emphasis on it in that culture and that tradition. It's so important.
Yeah.
Scott had mentioned, I think, in the first podcast, just like the art of the long meal.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's something special, I think, that we lose when, fast food and all this kind of stuff. But Luke captures those moments, and we learn a lot about Christ in those moments. Thinking of the calling of Matthew, Addie's message with the sinful woman at Simon's house, like just a beautiful moment at meals around dinner tables.
Right.
This one's a little different in that even though it's in the series called Around the Table, there's not really a table.
A little bit of creative license with the table.
Yeah. We kind of. It's not a table,
right?
But the truth still remains that Jesus is there, does some incredible stuff.
Yeah.
The disciples are there, but the audience certainly changes. The reason for the meal, kind of what happens, certainly changes. And I think Luke's getting across a new point with this one.
Yeah. Okay. So keep going with that because we do see food involved here, so there's something that's going to happen, and it's a miraculous something that's going to happen.
It is, and it's funny, we were talking earlier. It's a story that I think everyone knows about, right? You learned it in kids ministry downstairs. You learned this story, and you're like, "Yep, Jesus fed the 5,000." Right? It's actually with the resurrection included. This is the only one that is mentioned in all 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and all the accounts. So apparently it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Like
that says something for sure.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think even thinking about kind of the who, what, when, where, right? Whenever we read scripture, sometimes it's helpful for me to break it down like that. This is written by Luke, who was kind of hired by Theophilus. We don't know much about him, but a Greek guy who wanted to find out more about this Jesus. So we get the story of Luke and the gospel according to Luke, and then in his second installment in Acts, we see this guy jumping in around Acts 16 and other places, 18 and 28, actually traveling with Paul, writing his account from eyewitness firsthand accounts, right? So he is the guy who's going out, gathering all this information, traveled with Paul, and he is able to put together an account that speaks directly to Gentiles, to those of us who are included into God's family. And when I think about this series, Around the Table, Dinner with Jesus, there are some biblical scholars who believe that the very first time that Luke shared his gospel was around a table at Theophilus' house at a big dinner party. And Theophilus drew all of his friends together and said, "Hey, y'all got to hear this." So the story that we read about Jesus bringing people around a table, whether it's a basket on the side of a hill or a table, was probably read by the guy who wrote it from eyewitness accounts to a group of Gentiles at a dinner party. Like, that's pretty exciting stuff.
That is very cool. So what's the context? Because if you kind of read ahead or put yourself in that story, because you could just take it as a snapshot and see what happens in this moment. But we know that in studying it, Jesus is actually kind of going through something here and maybe even trying to retreat.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see him kind of town after town. He's rolling from place to place, healing people, teaching, performing miracles, that kind of stuff. He's healed the woman with the issues of blood. He's healed the girl who was dead. He brought her back to life. Like there's moments he's cast out demons. Like word's starting to get around, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't have social media back then, but like they're definitely finding out that there's something about this Jesus guy.
Yeah.
He's just sent out the 12 disciples. Hey, go try this out for yourself, kind of stuff. Amazing things that they're able to do. And the verses right above where we're going to be reading from in this message, they come back just totally excited, right? Like stoked. Oh my goodness, like God is able to do pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
He brings them back together. They share some of their excitement. He goes, great. Now with all this momentum, what are we going to do? Like a lot of leaders would lean in this point and be like, we're going to take the hill, like charge on. And Jesus is like, and now we're going to rest, right? We're going to withdraw to these quiet, secluded places. We're going to find a different rhythm. We're going to relax. We're going to just have a little bit of a Sabbath and just kind of take a break.
Yeah.
But the crowds have other ideas.
Different plans.
That's right. That's right.
So what do you see in that? Because Jesus could get pretty frustrated. You could get, as we probably would, at the end of this really long season and you're just wanting to get away.
Right.
But we don't see him react that way.
Yeah. So again, if we put in the context of us and work, like he's just come off a really, really busy schedule, right? Like he has been at it on the road, doing the, healing, like being present to everyone. He draws back from this just for a moment, right? We see him take this rhythm a lot of times in his ministry where he withdraws and the crowds show up. There's this excitement, this eager anticipation, knowing what he has done, and they want to see more of it. They want to experience it for themselves, whether they want to be healed or they believe fully that Jesus is the Messiah, or they're just maybe kind of interested. Man, let's see what this guy's all about.
Yeah.
They have shown up. And you're right. Jesus could have sent them away. We see it at some point in the story. Night starts to come. The disciples are thinking logistically, like, it's time to send these folks away. Like, I don't think like in a mean way, in a rude way, but it's like, they got to go. Like they got to go eat and then go do something. But Jesus, in the verses above that, welcomes them. He said, where he's exhausted, he's worn out. And I almost think of this, Jeff, you and I are dads, right? Mm-hmm. Think like you show up from work and you're worn out.
Yeah.
Right? And your kid comes up to you, your son or your daughters, that one of them comes up to you and they just need something from you. And it's in those moments, buddy, where we can like lean into our humanity and our exhaustion, or we dig deeper into something else that's probably outside of us, right? And so Jesus, in his full humanity and full divinity, looks at them as a loving father. That's the picture that I gather on this.
Yeah.
And looks at them, loves them well, and welcomes them into this space. Hey, I was trying to get away from you guys for a few minutes, right? Mama needs a break, right? Yeah. Mama needs to sit on the back porch for a minute, but Jesus sees them, they find him, and he loves them in that moment.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's so good. And you do see, it's kind of funny because like you mentioned, I'm just thinking they're on the heels of Jesus sending them out, empowering them. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're fully now walking into what God has for them. Mm-hmm. And then they're kind of like, hey, send these people away. Right. They're kind of now back telling Jesus, hey, here's what you need to do. Because, and then when he challenges it, so, clearly Jesus is about to do something. When he puts it on them, says, why don't you give them something to eat? And, they're just thinking, now they're back to practical. Now they're back to how are we going to do this? We can't afford to do this. Where would we even get food for this many people? So it's interesting you see that flip so often. That happens to us.
Preach. Absolutely, bro. That's right, man. Yeah, and they start thinking like logically, right?
Yeah.
In those moments where it makes zero sense, right? It makes absolutely, like, we've got to do this, right? We start, and you're absolutely right. They kick back into that mindset of, hey, we've got to think like logistically. We've got to do this. We've got to lean into those things that we've always trusted to get things done, right? We lean into our money. We don't have enough money to pay for food, to buy all these people food, right? And Jesus is like, there's another economy, right? We got other things going on here.
Yeah. So where do you take that? Kind of go back to what you were saying earlier. This is a familiar story. Maybe some of the things that we even think it's so miraculous that we have a hard time maybe even connecting with it. How do you think we receive this? What does this say to us today and shaping our faith?
Oh, I love it. So I think there's so much, right? We could talk about fish. We can talk about bread. John talks about Jesus looking specifically at Philip because he was one of the disciples who was from that area, and says, "Hey, Philip, what are we going to do? How are you going to feed these guys?" And Philip kicks back into, "Well, gee whiz, if I had to feed all these people, then you know what? Walmart's closed right now. Like, this is done, that's done." I think we can get caught up in those things.
Yeah.
But what speaks to us in this day and age is what do we draw on when the impossible comes, right? So what are those things that we naturally just kind of revert to? We would just say, "Oh, well, tire's flat. We're gonna just take care of this." Or like in those moments, we do what seems natural, but what Jesus is calling us to do is probably doing something that's supernatural, right?
Yeah.
When you don't have a way, there is a way.
Yeah.
Right? When you find yourself at the end of your abilities or your strength, when you're looking at an impossible situation, it's pretty good that we have an impossible God, right?
Yeah.
He's the one who, definitely shows up in those moments. He's like, "Yeah, all along, I got a plan." So
I love that.
Yeah.
And even just if you're taking it to the end, not only is it's not like barely enough. I think there's such a point to that. There was even leftovers.
Yeah. Like ridiculous amounts of love and grace. Ephesians 3:20 says, immeasurably more than you could ever ask or imagine, right? And that's the sort of like gracious, overwhelming, miraculous God that we have, right? So it's not just like, we barely got by, right?
Yeah.
We were scraping the bottom of these baskets. There was so much left over that they collected enough for those jokers to have food for the next day, right? They had to-go baskets.
Yeah.
He's so good like that.
Amen.
As we think about the people who showed up there, Jesus exhausted, the disciples full of energy from what they just witnessed, and a crowd of people who were all over the place.
Yeah.
I think about the people who will probably show up on a Sunday morning, or maybe listen to the podcast, all over the place, right?
Yeah.
A little intrigued, don't really know much about God. Let's just watch the thing and see what happens. Let's see how God shows up in this moment to the people who are maybe completely full of faith and just waiting to see what God is going to do
Right.
in this story and in the world, and all points in between. And God shows up to each one of them and speaks to each one of them. They get to experience true miracle. That apparently, again, is pretty important in all four Gospels.
Yeah, I'm excited for the person who is maybe in that space of, hey, I don't know who this God is. I don't know him personally, and almost putting God to the test in that way to say, show me God in those ways. And I think God welcomes those challenges if it's done with a pure heart and just knowing that, he answers those who call upon him. So there's something really cool to be taken away from that.
With an open heart, right? Right. We don't catch Jesus in a fit. He's welcoming. Right? He's loving. And so I'd encourage if there's someone out there who's listening to this and they think maybe that God doesn't have time for them, or that God's not ready to hear from them, or what God is ready and welcoming and loves you so much and wants you to experience the immeasurably more miracles that he has. Pretty awesome.
I love it, man. Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway and something that we can look forward to for Sunday for sure.
I can't wait.
It's going to be awesome.
I'm excited.